Hey, I'm Mike, the sole developer of Borealis, a city builder and tower defense game. Welcome to the second development blog. For this blog, I wanted to focus on the tower defense aspect of the game. Borealis starts out as a pure society and city builder. The player starts with a small collective of citizens and a blank island canvas. But I didn't want the challenge of the game to come from traditional city building trials. Things like simply running out of money. That's where the tower defense aspect of the game comes in. The onset of invaders attacking forces the players to divert city resources and shore up defenses. In addition, the inevitability of these defenses being breached forces the player to triage and make tough decisions. I didn't want the tower defense portion to be simply a money pit, where simply stacking towers yields a solution. Instead, I wanted layers of strategy that leaves the player pondering, wanting to give the game another go to try out that creative new idea. This will be the guiding philosophy for most of the design I'll cover in this blog. First of all, tower defense traditionally falls into two major categories. The largest by far is the preset path tower defense. In these, the path for enemies is predetermined and you can build various towers along this path. Some of these are even more limiting with predetermined spots to place towers. Clearly this doesn't yield the strategy I'm looking for, so I've opted to create an amazing tower defense game. Simply put, there's a starting and an ending point. The player can build a labyrinth to guide the enemies through their tower defense creation. For Borealis, I rationalize this behavior for the demon invaders by simply stating that they have targets that they want to destroy. They will seek those targets with absolute tunnel vision. In early development, I had played with the ability for the player to block off the invader path, where the invaders then would attack their way through. In playtesting, this created accidental scenarios where defenses were devastated and it really led to some unnecessary player frustration. As a result, it now prevents players from adding walls or towers that would block the path for the invaders. This amazing solution forces the player to come with interesting ways to lead the invaders around their relatively expensive towers using a large array of cheap walls. In earlier islands, the player is given a wide open space to create a maze, where in later levels they need to be creative and adapt their labyrinth to fit the landscape they are given. The next element of strategy I wanted to introduce is elemental damage, where in addition to normal damage, each element applies a unique effect. I didn't want the player to have the same strategy over and over, so I came up with a design where adding elemental damage to towers is done through the use of rare, mined elemental gems. The player will need to divert workforce from the city to mine for these gems. The player will also have to improvise their strategy based on what gems they are getting mined out. The next thing I wanted to introduce to elemental damage was the concept of synergies and negation. I created an elemental relationship wheel consisting of the 8 elements I had originally planned for. I wanted the elements to enhance the effects of their neighboring elements, greatly increasing the potency of the unique effect. In addition, I wanted to introduce negating effects of elements on the opposing side of the elemental wheel. When a new elemental damage is applied, if there's an ongoing effect from an opposing element, it will instantly negate that opposing element's effects. This removes any ongoing statuses and prevents what would be neighboring elemental bonuses if a synergistic element to the now negated element were to apply. You will notice that I've added elemental indicators above the 3D health bars. These indicate what element effects are active, and the brightness indicates how amplified the effect is. This means the player will have to be smart in how they place their elemental towers, maximizing synergies and avoiding negations. This pairs quite nicely with the amazing aspect already introduced. For the base towers in the game, I had originally designed a smaller arrow tower and a larger arrow tower with greater range and damage. I had planned on the elements adding the needed variety to these simple towers. After doing some playtesting, it was apparent that some form of area effect would greatly expand the variety of strategies that could be used. As a result, I developed a bombardment tower. It has shorter range, longer cooldown, but its hits apply a good area of effect on detonation. With the elements, this can be quite powerful, especially with slow, stuns, and knockbacks. These can result in the wave being clustered to even tighter space, increasing the effectiveness of the area of effects. Now with these 3 base towers and the elements concept, I feel like there's a good amount of options available for the player to implement mini strategies. I'm keeping the idea of a flamethrower-like line damage tower in my back pocket, but I want to wait for external play testing before I add any new tower types. I'm a bit concerned about overwhelming players with too many tower types with the elements. For the Invaders in Exodus Borealis, I wanted the islands to be cursed by old-world evil enemies. Thus far I've implemented minotaurs, golems, and various types of demon creatures. Many amazing tower defense games will introduce flying creatures or creatures that simply bypass the maze. I've always found this to be a bad game mechanic. As a player, it's frustrating for a standard strategy to be ignored, simply to have some sort of checkpoint to see that you have X amount of some specific anti-air tower by some level that you weren't aware of before it happens. Instead, I've looked to add invader wave diversity through other means. Some enemies will attack in greater numbers and clusters, favoring AoE damage. Some enemies will be faster with lower hit points, necessitating the use of slow and stun mechanics. Other enemies will be quite beefy and slow, where the use of accumulating stacking effects will be necessary to deal the massive amount of damage required to kill them. I've also added elemental resistance to some enemies, where they are only affected by the base level of an elemental effect, and synergized bonuses do no greater effect. This helps prevent the use of a single min-max strategy. Also, I've experimented with some full elemental immunities, but full immunities just let me feel cheated when I was playtesting, so I'm just sticking to resistances at this point. At this point, the tower defense development is completed as I've initially designed. The next step is playtesting, iterating on what's been developed. This may mean making tweaks to the initial setup or adding totally new mechanics based on what's working and what isn't. For example, in playtesting, I found that creating a maze was great for slowing down enemies to kill, but it was also quite painful for construction. Upgrading towers in the maze resulted in workers making long and slow trips with resources. The solution I came up with was adding a gate wall. This gate wall is lowered while enemies are away, allowing workers to take shortcuts through the maze. Right now, I'm the only one who's been doing any playtesting. I'm now nearing the point where I'm looking to bring on a few volunteers to help with playtesting and provide feedback. If you are interested in helping shape the direction of the game, feel free to join my Discord server. I'll be soliciting volunteers there, as well as posting polls getting feedback on what things should be added to the game next. Also, feel free to leave a comment with any questions or feedback you may have. Overall, everything is on pace with my estimated timeline. I'm hoping to release to early access mid-summer, and if everything goes well there, I'll be looking to do a full release at the start of winter. If you are interested in following the progress of Exodus Borealis, you can like this video and subscribe to this channel. In addition, you can wishlist the game on Steam. I'm a small one-man studio, and every individual interaction makes a big difference. Thank you for watching. Till next time.